Welcome back, everyone. So this is our first video in a new series titled Legends of the Cockpit. And this has been a dream of mine for a long time now. And I'm really excited to bring that content for you guys to watch as well. Now the idea is simple. We just want to showcase aviators and their aircraft from the World War II era. The hard part has been finding a place to start. There's so many stories, missions, aircraft, aviators, so much to go through. If you've seen our recent videos on YouTube, you've seen that I've been doing a lot with the P-47 on DCS World. And it got me thinking. So I did some fact finding and a little bit of research. And I found a really neat story that I think you guys will enjoy as well. So with that, welcome to our first episode of Legends of the Cockpit, the P-47. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoy.
There's 4 of them, 1 o'clock high.
They're coming around. Watch it.
Too fat is 6 o'clock up, coming in, diving out, Chief.
P-17 in trouble out of 2 o'clock, watching.
Got an engine on fire.
It's early 1943, and the U.S. Army Corps 56 Fire Group has just arrived in England. Now these guys are fresh off the boat. They've been training for months back in the States in the P-47B models. So they get to their new base in England, and they expect to see the same P-47B models that they flew and trained with back in the States. They get there, and they see these brand new P-47Cs, like right out of the crates, brand new, just assembled, ready to go. But keep in mind, the Brits and the Germans, they've been at war for almost 3 years now. So these British guys, they've seen quite a bit of combat, and they're convinced that the P-47 is just, it's too big, it's too slow, it can't maneuver. The ME-109s and the Focke-Wulf 190s, they're just going to shoot these planes out of the sky, no problems at all. So the Army Air Corps is testing out these new P-47s, and they notice they have problems with the Pratt & Whitney engines at high altitudes. They had ignition problems, distributor leaks, all bad things in an engine, and it was causing power loss in the aircraft. So it took a few months to get this stuff ironed out. In typical Army fashion, they stuck with it, and they got it fixed. So it takes some time, but the Army Air Corps, they finally get these issues resolved. In the 56th and early April of 43, they're made operational and begin offensive sweeps over France, looking for fighters to shoot down. On April 15th, Major Donald Blakesley of the 4th Fighter Group, he scores the first P-47 kill of the war by shooting down a Focke-Wulf 190. It would take the 56th until June 12th, 31 missions later, to score their first kill of the war. Now the very next day, on June 13th, a young pilot by the name of Second Lieutenant Robert Johnson, he would get his first kill of the war. Lieutenant Johnson spotted an enemy aircraft, broke formation, he gave chase, he downs the aircraft. Now by doing that, he broke formation, didn't inform anybody, went off and did his own thing. He returns to base, and as he puts it, he got the butt chewing of his life by his element commander, his squadron commander, and his wing commander. He did get the confirmed kill, and he did get a bottle of scotch from then Major General Carl Spaatz. Later that same month, Second Lieutenant Johnson would be involved in one of the most fascinating encounters that truly showcases the determination of aviators on both sides of the war and the truly amazing design of the P-47. So on June 26, 1943, the 56th Fighter Group, they're conducting another mission over France. And Johnson, he still has that fresh butt chewing in his mind. So they're flying along, he's in formation, he's not doing anything crazy. He spots some Focke-Wulf 190s coming towards the element. He's trying to radio the rest of his flight to say, hey look guys, we got incoming. Here they come. For some reason, his radio does not work. He can't get it to work. The enemy fighters show up. He gets hit by 20mm fire from one of the Focke-Wulf 190s. and this hit, it tears into his engine, it cuts his hydraulic line, he's got hydraulic fluids spraying into the cockpit, and it also hits his oxygen line. So now he has these two things in his cockpit spraying around. The hydraulic fluids, the oxygen, they make contact in the cockpit and it starts a flash fire. Luckily, it doesn't burn long, but Johnson, he's not wearing goggles. He left those at his base because they were broken from the last mission. So he has no oxygen now. That's been cut. He's at high altitude, so now he can't breathe. He's trying to get his canopy open, but the guy who shot him, as luck would have it, damaged the canopy, so it only comes back a little bit. He can't bail out. Airplane's descending. It's a bad day. Luckily, he gets below elevation to where he can breathe again. The hypoxia wears off, and he realizes, hey man, my airplane's still flying. Eases back on the throttle, the engine stops rocking, stops shaking. He levels the P-47 off. He can't bail out. He won't open the canopy still. He can't get out. What can he do? So he decides he'll try to make for the English Channel and head back towards England. So just as Johnson heads out across the English Channel, he's scanning behind him for anybody, just being diligent. And what does he spot? Of course, he finds a German Focke-Wulf 190, and it sees him limping off across towards the channel, and is banking right towards him. So Johnson, being smart, reaches down, lowers his chair all the way down the cockpit behind that armor plate. The 190 falls in right behind him, and starts to fire and burst into him. Luckily, and this is probably the only thing that saved Johnson that day, was that German pilot had no 20mm shells left to fire. He had spent those munitions somewhere else earlier in that day. But nevertheless, he kept firing burst after burst after burst into that damaged P-47. Johnson is sitting there in his chair, just shocked, just frozen, almost accepting his fate. And just burst after burst is hitting his aircraft. And finally, he snaps to his senses, realizes this is a bad day, and gets angry, grabs the throttle, hits the rudder, causes German to overshoot. Now Johnson tries to fall in behind to squeeze off a shot or two at this guy, but his canopy, it's covered in oil. The only thing this guy can do is poke his head outside of his broken canopy and try to see where the German flyer had went. He spots the German arcing around in a nice, gracefully slow bank, coming back around, and the 190 pulls up right next to Johnson and looks over at this guy, inspecting the damage to the aircraft. Looks for a second or two, and then falls back behind Johnson again. And again, Johnson scoots down in his chair behind that plate as this guy pumps round after round into his already damaged aircraft. He does this again. Johnson tries to pull the same maneuver with the throttle, hitting the rudder pedals. It doesn't work. The German's caught on to him by now. Pulls up next to him again for the second time. Looks over in complete disbelief. This P-47 looks like Swiss cheese. The thing is riddled with holes from the first engagement, and now from this guy pumping rounds into it. It just won't go down. So for the third time, this German falls in behind our guy, Lieutenant Johnson. Fires a couple more bursts, and as luck would have it, around the fourth or fifth burst, he runs out of munitions. He's out. He's spent everything he's got. That's it. Pulls up for a third time next to Johnson, looks over, just in complete total disbelief, makes eye contact, gives him a quick salute, and the German, he veers off and goes back towards base. So what Johnson didn't know was that he had just survived a run-in with the first guy to ever achieve 100 confirmed kills in the history of aerial combat, Egon Meyer of JG2. That's just crazy. What's even crazier is that P-47 that Johnson was flying, he made it back to England. Not just England, he made it back to his own base in England. And when he drops the landing gear, not only do both landing gear come down and lock, both of his tires are still functioning. Now he has to land without brakes or flaps on a grass runway. He lands the aircraft. He's trying to get this thing slowed down. And in his haste to get it slowed down, because he's barreling towards, at the end of the runway, a row of British Hurricanes and Spitfires, he pushes the rudder pedal, does a ground loop, and ends up parking the aircraft between two British aircraft like it had been parked there the entire time. And as Johnson would put it years later, it was just not his day to die. And after reading that story, I have to agree. He gets out of his aircraft, he starts trying to count the holes in the P-47. He counts over 100 on just one side of the aircraft and gives up. Now, Second Lieutenant Johnson, he would go on to achieve 27 air-to-air kills against the Luftwaffe in Europe. The 56th Fighter Group, they got off to a slow start in the war. These guys ended up being the highest scoring P-47 outfit, period. They racked up 665.5 kills, and they had the most kills of any fighter group in the 8th Air Force. Now, the P-47 was an amazing machine, and so were the guys that flew it, the guys on the ground that worked on it, and those engineers back home who designed it. Just a marvel of science. Thanks for watching the first episode of Legends from the Cockpit. I hope you guys found this fun and informative, and I really look forward to doing more of these in the future. Until then, keep your 6 o'clock clear, and if you don't, you better be flying a P-47.